Is edging on Nofap a bad thing? Yes, it is. In fact, it is one of the absolute worst things you can possibly do on Nofap. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you why. Now, a lot of people will give you a relatively simple argument, like, well, when you edge, it is pretty much guaranteed that you relapse, and so therefore it's a stupid thing to do, because it makes you relapse, and therefore you should not edge. And while I think this is probably true, yes, this is probably the case in most cases, but I think there is also a much deeper, far more serious reason why edging is so horribly bad for us. Now, before I get into the actual reason, I want you guys to think about this for a second. Edging is something. Now, if you guys don't know what edging is, it is this thing where you watch the dirty videos and you touch yourself to the dirty videos, but you don't climax. You take yourself to the edge. You take yourself close to the climax, and then you can stick around at this point for hours on end, right? And you do this through a period of several days, where every day you watch the dirty stuff for hours, but you don't really climax. Now, a lot of people use this as an excuse. They say, well, is this really a bad thing? Did I really relapse because I did not climax? Is edging good or not? Now, think about this for a second, guys. Edging is something that is primarily done by people who are the absolute deepest into this addiction. The people that are affected by the dirty videos the most of all, those tend to be the people that eventually resort to the edging behavior. People that are not that affected usually don't edge. So if you are someone that does edge, then you probably are someone that needs Nofap the absolute most. And if you start asking questions like, is edging a bad thing? Then, well, you are probably making up excuses to keep going in your addiction. I want you to realize that. But there's also a bright side to this, because if you are someone that is that deeply affected by this addiction, that also means that if you do Nofap, you will probably experience the actual benefits to a much greater extent than other people will. Because, the downsides of being this addicted are that bad for you that if you quit this addiction, the high will probably also be higher. The lower the low, the higher the high. So I hope that might serve as a little bit of motivation to you. Things can get drastically better. But enough about that. Let's get into the actual reasons why edging is so bad. Now, in order to explain the first reason why edging is so bad, I'd like us to take a step back and think about why we were actually doing Nofap in the first place. Now, of course, this differs from person to person. You can have your own personal goals. Everyone can have their own personal goals. But to me personally, and I think to a lot of other people as well, I think one of the absolute most important reasons to do Nofap is because the dirty videos, watching them all the time, fapping to them, really numbs the reward system in your brain, the so-called dopamine system. Now, I'm not going to go too much into depth about how exactly dopamine works, because I've done this in a lot of previous videos and it would take too much time. But the very short version is that dopamine is this reward circuit in your brain that is responsible for how much pleasure and satisfaction you get out of life and how motivated you actually are towards things. Now, sexual stimuli are some of the most overstimulating things there are, and obviously the dirty videos provide these stimuli in a very unnatural amount, and so that tends to numb our dopamine system. And when our dopamine system goes numb, we kind of lose the pleasure we get out of life, the satisfaction we get out of doing things like working on ourselves, taking care of our health, building a business, raising children. Everything in life starts to feel less satisfying. Everything in life starts to feel less fun, like playing a video game. And we also tend to lose our motivation to actually work towards our goals. And so, well, these are my words, but in my opinion, if this happens to you, that is horrible, right? That just destroys your whole life. It can destroy your whole life. So to me, that is one of the absolute most important, if not the one big, most important reasons to do Nofap. So now, think critically about what exactly you are doing when you are edging. When you are edging, you are absolutely destroying your dopamine system. You are bombarding your brain with dopamine non-stop. You are watching these dirty videos for hours a day. If you have like a normal, more vanilla-ish fapping session, right, where you just open up a dirty video and go straight from start to finish, and it takes you 5 or 10 minutes, your dopamine peaks, but then it backs down. But now let's take a look at what happens when you edge. You take yourself close to that peak and you keep yourself close to that peak for literally hours. And then you wake up the next day and you are still aroused, you are still on the edge, and so you start doing the same thing for hours again. This is literally the worst thing you can possibly do when it comes to your dopamine system. This is the exact opposite of what you should want to do when you do Nofap. But there is another very important reason, because dopamine isn't the only thing that is increased when we receive sexual stimuli. But there are other neurotransmitters and hormones as well. Some of the main ones including prolactin and oxytocin. Now, I'm not going to go too much into depth about prolactin because this is a little bit of a debated topic. I've seen mixed results in the scientific literature. Some say that when you edge, it increases your prolactin. Others say that prolactin is primarily released after climaxing. But there are some effects known to prolactin, like how it can counteract testosterone, etc. So that is definitely something to be wary about. But I think the absolute most important other hormone besides dopamine is oxytocin, because the thing about oxytocin and sexual stimuli is that our body produces oxytocin right before we are about to climax and after we climax in incredible amounts, so that we bond to the person we do the deed with. Now, this is probably an evolutionary thing where, if we procreate and create children, it actually makes us want to stick together. So the man can protect the woman, and then they can, the man can protect the children, and he can, they can raise the child together. Makes a lot of sense. But the problem is, when you watch the dirty videos, you are not bonding to an actual person that you are supposed to stick around to, but you are bonding to the dirty videos, and you are bonding to the specific category of videos that you are watching. And so this is exactly how specific tastes, aka fetishes, are built. So if, for example, you watch interracial cuckoldry videos, your brain is producing massive amounts of oxytocin, and it's trying to bond to these videos for however long you are edging. So for like hours a day. And so you are bonding to these videos in a much greater amount than you would have ever bonded to a real person in nature, in reality, basically. And I think this also explains why there are so many people who are so obsessed with their specific fetish. A lot of people say, well, it's almost as if this fetish runs my life. I keep thinking about it all day, and it's, it determines everything I do in life. My life revolves around that fetish. And that makes sense, because you are bonded to that fetish to a much greater extent than nature ever intended you to bond to something. You are not meant to receive oxytocin for these durations, in these amounts. This is completely unnatural. So as a summary of this video, is edging a bad thing? Yes or no? Well, I think you guys have the answer. Yes, edging is horrible, both when it comes to dopamine as well as when it comes to oxytocin and bonding. Edging is probably the absolute worst thing you can do, because it just completely destroys your dopamine system, and it is the most effective way to rewire yourself to fall in love with a specific fetish and just completely mess up your sexuality. I would probably even go as far as to say that when you are already edging, it is probably better to just climax and get it over with. Because when you climax, you get that post-nut clarity, and you can just continue going on with your life. But if you stick on that edge, you just keep bombarding your brain with dopamine and oxytocin. Now don't use this as an excuse, okay? By all means try to avoid edging. You know, don't use this as an excuse where you say, well, I was already edging, so now I might as well just climax, and you just keep doing that over and over again. No, be honest with yourself, avoid edging at all costs, just don't do it. But if for whatever reason you find yourself trapped on that edge, you are already edging and you keep going for hours, in that case, I think it's probably actually better to just blow that load and get it over with. Because again guys, edging, it is probably the worst thing you can do when it comes to Nofap. Now if you guys like this video, click the like button, leave a comment below. If you want to see more of my videos, I suggest you click the subscribe button, because I'm going to create a lot more videos for a very long time. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.